coming to our lecture, let's start it. First of all, we have the definition of नहीं चल रहा नहीं आगे चल रहा Rheumatic fever is an immunologically mediated inflammatory disorder which occurs as a sequel to group A streptococcal pharyngeal infections. A multi-system disease that affects the heart, joints, brain, subcutaneous tissue, and the cutaneous tissue. Acute rheumatic fever remains an important preventable cause of cardiac disease, most common in children aged between 6 to 15 years. And a family history of rheumatic fever and low socioeconomic status are important contributory factors. Additional risk factors include poor socioeconomic status, overcrowding, and age. People who are poor and belong to the low socioeconomic strata, they are more prone to get rheumatic heart disease. While people who live in slums or dump areas they are more prone to get rheumatic heart disease. This is the commonest age group for rheumatic fever is 5 to 15 years. Climate and season also has an important role. It is more commonly seen in cold climate. When we are succumbed to living indoors, there are more overcrowding and more chances of getting the infection. Upper respiratory tract infection rheumatic fever is an outcome of upper respiratory tract infection with group A beta hemolytic streptococci, as I have already mentioned. Now coming to the pathogenesis, there is no direct invasion of tissues by the microorganism, but it is an autoimmune disease that involves antigen and antibody interaction. It is due to an immunological reaction that is a delayed sequelae of group A beta hemolytic streptococcal infection of the pharynx. But it has to be pharyngeal infection, not the skin infection. If skin is infected, this will not lead to rheumatic fever. There will be other manifestations other than the rheumatic fever. This is an important point to remember. Throat infection with group A streptococcal infection is a must. What happens actually, body produces. ये म्यूट हो गया, अनम्यूट कर दो. इधर आ रहा है म्यूटेड बाय द होस्ट. आ रहा तो यू आर म्यूटेड बाय द होस्ट. अनम्यूट कर दिया आपने? मुझे पता नहीं, वो बार बार आ रहा था म्यूटेड बाय द होस्ट. अब अनम्यूट कर. ठीक है, बस ये देखो. चलें ठीक. Okay, what happens is that body produces antibodies against these streptococci. These antibodies, what they do, they cross-react with the human tissue because of the antigenic similarity between the streptococcal component and the human connective tissue. This is called the molecular mimicry. Because there is certain amino acid sequence that is similar between the human tissue and the group A streptococcal organism. This leads to immunological mediated inflammatory reaction and damage to the human tissue that involves mostly the heart, joint, brain, and the connective tissue. Diagrammatic representation, what I have already told you, as you can see, it all starts with the infection of the throat with group A streptococcal infection. This leads to immunological reaction and other manifestations of the fever involving the joints, the heart, the skin, and the nervous system, which is later to develop after a longer lapse of time. Thomas Duckett Jones was an American cardiologist who has done pioneer work in the diagnosis of rheumatic fever. He was the one who did major work on this disease and its association with rheumatic heart involvement. Clinical manifestations of the disease. The infection often precedes the presentation of rheumatic fever by 2 to 6 weeks. That means that before rheumatic fever develops, there is a preceding infection 2 to 6 weeks earlier. It is diagnosed using the revised Jones criteria that consist of both clinical and laboratory findings. Two major criteria or one major or two minor criteria with an evidence of recent group A streptococcal disease strongly suggests the diagnosis of acute rheumatic fever. This is the tabulated form of major criteria. First one is the polyarthritis, then there is carditis, chorea, erythema marginatum, and subcutaneous nodule. Polyarthritis is the commonest presentation that presents as swelling, limited motion, tendon, and erythematous joints. This is migratory. While carditis is the second commonest presentation that is mostly in the form of pancreatitis and presents as murmur, heart failure, cardiac enlargement, and pericardial rubber effusion. Third major manifestation is chorea. However, it is not as common as polyarthritis or carditis. Erythema marginatum and subcutaneous nodules are the fourth and the fifth major criteria that you should remember and apply while diagnosing a patient with rheumatic fever. While the minor criteria includes clinical findings as well as the lab findings. Clinical findings include fever, 38.2 degrees centigrade to 38.9 degrees centigrade, arthralgias, which is joint pain without swelling. This is different from arthritis. And history of previous rheumatic fever. Lab findings include elevated ESR, seriatic protein, and ECG. On ECG, we have prolonged PR interval. And the evidence of recent group A streptococcal disease include positive throat swab culture, which is positive in 25% of the cases, the rapid streptococcal antigen test, elevated or rising streptococcal antibody titer, ASO titer. Then other major, then I'm going to discuss with you the major criteria, that is the carditis in detail. It is the earliest manifestation, 90% of the cases within the first 2 weeks of onset. Mostly manifests as pancreatitis involving pericarditis, endocarditis. Pericarditis manifests as precordial pain, friction rub, ST segment changes, and endocarditis presents as pansystolic murmur of mitral regurg with or without aortic regurg murmur. Other cardiac manifestations include cardiac enlargement, soft S1, S3, gallop rhythm, CCF. Important thing for you to remember is that carditis is the only manifestation of rheumatic fever that leaves behind a sequelae and permanent damage to the organ. Once it develops in a patient, it never resolves completely. There is always a residual damage left behind that is mostly to the valves of the heart, and it presents as different valvular lesions. The second important major criteria is the joint, that is the migratory polyarthritis. It involves the larger joints. Uh, Usually more than 5 joints are affected. Most commonly knee, ankle joint, wrist joint, elbow and shoulder joint. All the signs of inflammation are easily visible. That is redness of the joint, warm joint, swollen, painful, and limitation of movement. And it is better to appear, lasts for 3 to 7 days, subsides, and then appears in the other. And that is why it is called migratory, because first it starts in one of the major larger joints, remains there for around a week, then starts to subside, and as it is subsiding, another major joint is involved. That is the reason for the use of term migratory. It responds to salicylates and NSAIDs, and most common in older patients, but in pediatric patients you are also able to find migratory polyarthritis. Small joints and the cervical spine are very less commonly involved. Mostly it involves the larger joints. Ernest Charles Lessig was a French physician who gave a very famous quotation regarding the rheumatic fever. That is, rheumatic fever licks at the joints but bites at the heart. What does that mean? It means that it involves both the joints and the heart, but the amount of involvement is more in case of heart because it causes permanent damage to the heart valves and always leaves behind a residual damage. It does involve the joints, but this involvement is self-limiting, resolving. It resolves after some time, and there is no residual damage left behind, as you see in the case of heart. So it is very correct to say that it licks at the joints and bites at the heart. The other major criteria is the rheumatic subcutaneous nodules. These are usually late manifestations found in around 20% of the patients and appears after about 6 weeks of onset of rheumatic fever. These are non-tender subcutaneous nodules present on the bony prominences. These are small, painless, mobile hard lumps present beneath the skin, most common along the extensor surface of the joints, that is the knee, elbow, wrist, also seen on bony prominences, tendons, dorsi of feet, occiput or cervical spine. Pinhead to almond size. This is the pictorial representation. As you can see that these are nodular prominences that are present on the major joints. This is the knee joint, again knee joint, this is the spine. These are firm and non-tender, may be present isolated or they may be found in the form of clusters. Erythema marginatum is the next major criteria. It is present in around 30% of the cases, early manifestation. These are usually erythematous, serpiginous, non-pruritic lesions, macular with pale centers. These are usually present as pink macules, which are clear centrally and have a serpiginous spreading edges. Serpiginous is just like a snake, as the way a snake uh, crawls and spreads. These lesions have similar margins, and they are mostly seen on the trunk and the limbs, but they are never found on the face. You will never find them on the face, but you can easily appreciate them on the trunk and the limbs of the patient. And if heat is applied, they get worsened, often associated with chronic thyroiditis. So this is a erythema marginatum. As you can see, these are macular lesions with a erythematous raised margin and central clearing. These are present on the trunk. This is present on the back, and you can very well appreciate the serpiginous margins of these lesions. Sydenham chorea is the neurological manifestation of rheumatic fever. It is a late manifestation, usually presents around 3 to 4 months after the onset, as opposed to the carditis, arthritis, and the erythematous lesions. Sydenham chorea is a late manifestation. These are usually semi-purposeful, jerky movements and also involve deranged speech, muscular incoordination, and facial grimace. These are exacerbated by stress and disappears with sleep and rest. As I've already told you, in case of erythema marginatum, these are worsened by the application of heat, while the chorea is precipitated or exacerbated by stress. And once the patient is put to sleep or rest, the chorea disappears. Mostly found in the females, and we carry out different clinical maneuvers to elicit the chorea using the milkmaid drip and the handwriting examination. We can elicit chorea in a patient in whom we are suspecting of having rheumatic fever. And another important thing to remember is these are self-limiting and they resolve within 2 to 6 weeks. How will you differentiate rheumatic fever from different diseases? There are basically three manifestations: arthritis, carditis, and chorea. So, for arthritis, we have to differentiate for it from a patient of juvenile idiopathic arthritis, reactive arthritis, SLE, and malignancy based on the history and the clinical examination. While for carditis, the important differentials that you need to keep in mind is viral myocarditis, pericarditis, infective endocarditis, and Kawasaki disease. While for chorea, you have to consider other diagnoses as well, like Huntington's chorea, Wilson's disease, and cerebral palsy. How will you investigate a case of rheumatic fever? Um, Non-specific investigations, ESR and, CRP, these are included in the manual criteria. They are used for the monitoring of the disease activity and disease progression, and usually raised in acute stage of the disease. ASO titer is very important for diagnosing rheumatic fever. Evidence of an antecedent group A streptococcal infection is based on elevated or rising titer. Either you get a raised value of ASO titer, or you will, once you carry out serial testing, you will find that ASO titer is showing a serial rise. It is an essential diagnostic criteria which is raised in 80% of the patients with acute rheumatic fever, always above 200 TORS units per ml, and remains elevated for weeks or months. If it is more than 500 TORS, it means that there is a recent streptococcal infection. Around 333 TORS, it has got borderline significance, and less than 333 TORS, we have to consider other diagnosis. It is very less likely to be rheumatic fever. So, to label a patient as of having rheumatic fever, you have to have ASO titer above 333, and to be very specific, above 500. Below 333, it is very less likely. So this is the usually the cutoff point. Throat swab culture, it is a more direct evidence of streptococcal infection, as infection may still be present in the throat even if the antibiotics have been started. CBC will show you anemia with polymorphonuclear leukocytosis, as you can very well appreciate, because there is a preceding infection. Chest X-ray will show cardiomegaly due to CCF or pericarditis. Now, coming to the ECG, ECG will show prolonged PR interval to more than 0.18 seconds along with prolonged QT interval. Then you can also find second degree heart block or complete atrioventricular block. ST segment changes and T wave changes will also be present if there is pericarditis or myocarditis. Echo is very important for diagnosing because it helps us to detect valvular and myocardial involvement, and helps in monitoring the severity of the disease and need for valve replacement. Now, the Jones criteria that I have discussed with you earlier, it underwent 4 revisions to improve its sensitivity. Final being made in 2015, that has established Jones criteria as the gold standard for diagnosing of acute rheumatic fever. So, Jones criteria is now the gold standard for diagnosis of acute rheumatic fever after all these revisions. Separate guidelines have been given for low risk and moderate to high risk groups. Also embraces echocardiography, recommending its use in all populations when available for diagnosis of acute rheumatic fever. It further ensures uniform system for diagnosing and data collection at research centers across the globe. Also helps in establishing national programs for acute rheumatic fever and rheumatic heart disease control and prevention. So for you to remember is that the Jones criteria, it underwent revisions, and the final revision of Jones criteria was done in 2015, and after which it has been established as the gold standard for diagnosis. This is important for you to remember. What was the significance of doing all this hassle? Why was it needed? Uh, Basically, 3 main changes were made in Jones criteria: risk stratification, echocardiographic detection of subclinical carditis, and joint manifestations. These 3 were the main changes that were done in the previous Jones criteria that had been in use since 1960s, because it was the need of the day to make important changes with the changing time. The first change was the risk stratification. The revised Jones criteria, it divided the population into low risk and moderate to high risk population. The low risk population is defined as population in which the incidence of acute rheumatic fever is less than 2 per 100,000 school-age children in a year, or less than 1 per 100,000 population, general population in a year. So if you are considering school-going children, if the incidence of rheumatic fever is less than 2 children per 100,000 in a year, we will label it as having low risk group. While if it is less than 1 in general population, again it will be considered as the low risk. While the children who are not from a low risk population, they should be considered as moderate to high risk. We in Pakistan, we come under the high risk group because in our region it is a highly prevalent disease. Other addition was that of subclinical carditis as a major manifestation. The criteria recommends that when possible, all patients with confirmed or suspected acute rheumatic fever should undergo echocardiography to evaluate for carditis. With those who are negative on first evaluation, they should be undergoing repeated study to assess for evolving cardiac disease. Subclinical carditis का मतलब होता है कि if on auscultation you are not able to find anything, but if you do the echo and you find a valvular lesion in a patient whom you're suspecting as having rheumatic fever, he's fulfilling the other criteria, and if you go on to find valvular lesion on echocardiography, then you will take it as a major manifestation and label him as having acute rheumatic fever. Fine. So, normal echocardiogram can rule out a diagnosis of carditis made through clinical evaluation. Now, the other important revision, the last one, was that in the joint manifestation. Previously, arthritis, migrative polyarthritis was included as in the major criteria, and arthralgias were included in the minor criteria. But in the revised Jones criteria, it includes migratory polyarthritis as well as monoarthritis and polyarthralgias as the major criteria, and monoarthralgias are the minor criteria. Arthralgias, as I've already mentioned, these are simple painful joints without any swelling. While if you find the signs of inflammation, that is swelling of the joint, the redness, tenderness, and limitation of movement, you will label it as arthritis, not arthralgia. Minor criteria include fever cutoff point was low to 38 degrees centigrade, ESR more than 30 millimeter in 1 hour is taken as in a part of the moderate to high risk population. More than 60 is included in low risk group. In case of acute rheumatic fever recurrence, patients with history of acute rheumatic fever are at high risk for recurrence. Those who have had an episode of rheumatic fever, they are at high risk of having a recurrence of rheumatic fever. This is a summary of the 2015 Jones criteria that I've already discussed with you. As you can see, low risk population and moderate to high risk population, major criteria is carditis. First of all, low risk group includes 2 or less than 2 per 100,000 school-age children, or 1 or less than 1 per 100,000 in all age groups, while more than 2 per 100,000 is taken in the moderate to high risk group. Major criteria for low risk is clinical or subclinical carditis. Same goes for the moderate to high risk population. Polyarthritis is included in my low risk group, and monoarthritis and or polyarthralgias included in the moderate to high risk group. So this is the major difference. In low risk groups, polyarthritis is the major criteria. If you find polyarthritis in the patient who is coming from a low risk group, you will label it as having rheumatic fever. But if a patient is from a moderate to high risk population, even if you find monoarthritis and polyarthritis, with polyarthritis, you will label him as rheumatic fever. Chorea is present in as major criteria in both the groups. Erythema marginatum and subcutaneous nodules are the same. While for minor criteria, there are few changes in case of fever and markers of inflammation. For fever, in low risk group, temperature of more than 38.5 is taken as a minor criteria for diagnosis. While in case of moderate to high risk group, temperature of more than 38 is taken as minor criteria. While in case of ESR, if it is more than 60 millimeter in first hour, in 1 hour, and CRP is more than 3, we will take it as a marker of inflammation and minor criteria. But for major or moderate high risk group, even ESR is more than 30, and then it is taken as part of the minor criteria because it is from the high risk group. So even lower value of ESR is taken as diagnostic and positive for diagnosis. While coming to the echocardiography criteria, we have certain criteria to meet for mitral regurg and certain criteria to meet for aortic regurg. Jet length, peak velocity, and pansystolic jets are to be seen. Now coming to the management and treatment. First of all, supportive management and then followed by the treatment and management of complications. Bed rest is advised to the patient. If the patient presents with CCF, you have to treat the CCF by giving antifailure medications like digitalis and diuretics. And for chorea, you have to give diazepam and haloperidol, give rest to the joints and supportive sprinting if required. Antibiotic therapy is used for the eradication of streptococci. As I have already mentioned, it is due to a preceding infection with group A streptococcal cocci. So you have to treat this infection as well to completely eradicate, because they may still be present in the pharyngeal tissue or tonsils even if you are having a negative throat swab culture. Drug of choice is benzyl penicillin. Single intramuscular injection of benzathine penicillin, 6 to 12 lakh units, or a 10-day course of oral penicillin G, 500 to 1000 milligram, 4 times a day, is usually used for complete eradication. So या तो आप उसको एक सिंगल इंट्रामस्कुलर इंजेक्शन बेंजाथीन पेनिसिलिन का लगा दो 6 lakh units या 12 lakh units depending on the weight of the patient. Or if you are not able to give this injection, then you have to give them oral penicillin G for 10 days, 4 times a day. If a patient is allergic to penicillin, the other alternative is azithromycin or erythromycin. The other anti-inflammatory drug that is used for the symptomatic relief is the salicylate and the steroids. Salicylates are used in the treatment of typical migratory polyarthritis and if a patient has carditis but no cardiomegaly or CCA. The dose is in the first 3 to 5 days, you have to give 50 to 70 milligram per kg per day, 4 divided doses. And the next 3 weeks, सबसे पहले हम 5 days के लिए 50 to 70 milligram per kg per day से देते हैं, फिर इसको हम हाफ करते हैं 50 milligram per kg per day, same divided dose for next 3 weeks. पहले 3 दिन, फिर 3 weeks, and then further lowering it by 50%, we go on to give 25 milligram per kg per day for next 4 weeks. Steroids are also given as part of the anti-inflammatory treatment. They have a dramatic effect in relieving the fever, arthritis, and the subcutaneous nodules, erythema marginatum, and bringing the ESR back to normal. Indications of steroids are carditis with more than minimal CCF. Dose of steroid is 2 milligram per kg per day 4 divided doses for 2 to 3 weeks. Then we reduce the dose, taper it to 1 milligram per kg per day for the next 3 weeks. First 3 weeks, you have to give it the dose of 2 milligram per kg, and in the next 3 weeks, you have to give it, reduce it by 50%, giving it 1 milligram per kg. Then you go on for gradual tapering of the dose by 5 milligram in 24 hours every 2 to 3 days. While the steroids are being tapered, we add aspirin at 50 milligram per kg per day for 6 weeks to prevent the rebound of inflammation. Because if you will not add aspirin for next 6 weeks and you taper the steroid and then discontinue, the disease and the inflammation will rebound. So this is an important thing for you to remember. For the treatment of pseudonym chorea, you have to give the patient a calm and quiet environment. Sedatives in the form of phenobarbital, haloperidol, chlorpheniramine, these are also effective. For CCF, there is myocarditis without CCF, aspirin is used. If it is with CCF, then you have to give steroids. In case of non-responsiveness to medical therapy, selective repair or bad replacement is the option that we have. Prevention of the disease is very important, because if you prevent a patient from developing rheumatic fever who has group A streptococcal infection, this is the best thing you can do to the patient. That is, if patient develops group A streptococcal infection, you have to treat it promptly instead of waiting for him to develop rheumatic fever, because once he develops the rheumatic fever, he goes on to develop cardiac manifestation, joint manifestation, and has a miserable life to lead. So important thing is to treat the infection at the first place. Prevention is primary, giving a 10-day course of penicillin therapy once you have found a patient of streptococcal infection. Secondary prevention is directed at preventing acute group A beta hemolytic streptococcal pharyngitis in patients at substantial risk of recurrent acute rheumatic fever. Primary prevention is used in a patient who had a group A streptococcal infection. You have to ensure that he does not go on to develop rheumatic fever. But unfortunately, if a patient was not treated earlier and went on to develop rheumatic fever and then presented with another attack, then you have to prevent further damage. That is, if a patient has a history of rheumatic fever, for future prevention, you have to give him secondary prophylaxis. Primary prevention prevents the first attack of rheumatic fever by identifying all the patients with streptococcal throat infection and treating them with penicillin. It is theoretically simple, but in practice it is difficult. Many infections are inapparent, or if apparent, they are not brought to the attention of the health service. This is the major dilemma. The viable approach is to concentrate in high-risk groups, that is a school age group. That is, if you find out a child who is of the school age group and is of the high-risk group, that is our population, and you find out that he is having this infection with group O streptococcal, you have to give him penicillin for 10 days. Antibiotic prophylaxis is in highly prevalent areas of presenting penicillin. Other important aspects is to promote health through improving living conditions, hygiene, avoid overcrowding, and providing access to medical facilities and education. Appropriate antibiotic therapy, if started before 9th day of symptom of acute group A streptococcal pharyngitis, is effective in preventing first attack of acute rheumatic fever. So this is how much important it is. Okay, if you can prevent a patient who has this infection of group A streptococcal to develop rheumatic fever, this is the best thing you can do to him. Secondary prevention is directed for the patients who have had rheumatic fever in the past, or they are at the risk of developing recurrent rheumatic fever. It requires continuous antibiotic prophylaxis. Antibiotic prophylaxis should start as soon as the diagnosis of acute rheumatic fever has been made and a full course of antibiotic therapy has been provided. Single injection of benzathine penicillin 6 to 12 lakh unit every 3 to 4 weeks is the most effective method to ensure compliance. Oral penicillin prophylaxis is by 500,000 milligram of penicillin twice a day. And for penicillin allergics, alternatives are erythromycin, clarithromycin, azithromycin, and ceftazidime. इसका मतलब ये है कि एक पेशेंट अगर आपके पास प्रेजेंट करता है जिसको एक दफ़ा रोमैटिक फीवर हो चुका है, इसका डायग्नोसिस जैसे ही एस्टैब्लिश होता है, you put him on secondary prevention. That is, you have to prevent the second attack of rheumatic fever. For this, you have to give him intramuscular injection of benzathine penicillin every 3 to 4 weeks. That is once a month. You have to ensure that this patient gets an injection, intramuscular injection of benzathine prevention, and you have to counsel him that if he wants to prevent second attack of rheumatic fever in the future, he has to have it and he has to ensure the compliance. Every month, he has to get an intramuscular injection of benzathine penicillin. Now, this is the dose. 12 for individuals allergic to penicillins, you give erythromycin or clarithromycin or azithromycin. For how long this secondary prophylaxis is to be continued? There are different conditions and different durations. In a patient who had rheumatic fever but did not develop carditis, in that patient you will give this prophylaxis, that is in the form of intramuscular injection, for at least 5 years after the first attack or until 18 years of age, whichever is the longer. For example, if a patient has come to you at the age of 6 years for the first time with the diagnosis of rheumatic fever, once his antibiotic treatment has been completed, you will put him on single intramuscular injection, monthly injection, till he is 6 plus 5, 11 years of age or 18 years. In that case, 18 years is longer. So we will advise him to get this monthly injection till he is 18 years of age, right? And if unfortunately he develops carditis with persistent valvular disease, then this duration is increased. It becomes at least 10 years since the last residual injection or till the age of 40 years. In some cases, lifelong prophylaxis. If a patient has rheumatic fever with carditis, but there is no residual heart disease, then the duration of prophylaxis will be 10 years or well into adulthood. But if there is a severe valvular disease following up valvular surgery, then you will give lifelong prophylaxis. They will have to have monthly injections for the rest of their life. Prognosis, it may cause permanent damage to the heart, but not to the joints. Therefore, the said it leaks at the joint, bites at the heart. The prognosis depends on the degree of permanent cardiac damage. Cardiac involvement may resolve completely, especially if it is in the first episode, and prophylactic regimen is followed completely. Severity of cardiac enlargement involvement worsens with each recurrence of rheumatic fever. Approximately 50 to 70% of the patients with minimal carditis, they recover with no residual heart disease. Cardiac involvement increases with increasing incidence of recurrent acute rheumatic fever attack. The more recurrent attacks of rheumatic fever you have, the more is the chance of having cardiac involvement. Patients with carditis during the initial episode are more likely to have carditis with recurrence. That is, if a patient has presented with rheumatic fever and carditis, he is more likely to have carditis with each recurrence. So with every recurrence, the chances of having carditis and more severe disease, they increase. Risk of permanent heart damage increases with each recurrence, as I've already told you. Continuous Continuous chemoprophylaxis against streptococcal pharyngitis is needed in patients with rheumatic fever to prevent the recurrence. Approximately 50% of the recurrence with each streptococcal pharyngitis. Now, an important component of rheumatic fever is rheumatic heart disease. It is the result of damage to the heart valves, which occurs after repeated episodes of acute rheumatic fever. The order of frequency of involvement depends on the hemodynamic stress placed on various chambers of the heart. Right? The more hemodynamic stress a heart chamber is bearing, the more is the chances of being involved with rheumatic heart disease. So the order of involvement is mitral 65 to 70%, followed by aortic 20 to 25%, tricuspid 10%, and pulmonary valve is very rare to be involved. Valve incompetence is more common than valve stenosis. That is, valve regurg is more common than stenosis. Incompetence का मतलब है valve close properly नहीं होते there, and as a result of incomplete closure of the valve, there is chances of backflow of blood. Pathophysiology, to start with, we have group A, beta hemolytic streptococcal infection, but unfortunately, if it is untreated, that leads to rheumatic fever, first attack. All layers of the heart and the mitral valves, they get inflamed. All signs of inflammation are found. Then, if it goes on to develop vegetations and ultimately manifests as valvular regurgitation and stenosis and finally heart failure. This is the diagrammatic representation. What I've already told you. This is the acute rheumatic heart disease, rheumatic fever, first attack of rheumatic fever following a sore throat infection. Then we have involvement of the heart. Cross-reactive antibodies are deposited in the myocardial tissues and heart valves in the form of vegetations and presenting as pericarditis. In case of stenosis, if the valvular stenosis is the lesion, the valve will not open all the way, and this will not allow enough blood to pass through. And if there is valvular regurgitation, that is valvular incompetence, valve does not close all the way, so the blood will flow backwards. This is a mitral valve vegetation caused by endocarditis. So this brings me to the end of the lecture. I hope you were able to comprehend the lecture completely, and you were able to understand what is the pathogenesis of rheumatic fever, what is the etiology, how does it present, what are the major as well as the minor criteria of rheumatic fever in order to diagnose it, how will you manage the patient, what are the different treatment modalities, what are the different complications, how can you prevent rheumatic fever to develop into rheumatic heart disease, what are the different modalities of primary and secondary prevention, what is the duration of different prophylactic regimens. So if still you have any question, you're more than welcome to ask, and I'm there to answer.